That's the procession, the body being now conveyed or wheeled by senior military officers, soldiers, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all of them there, obviously and certainly within the rank of Major General, which is the rank at which the former president left service. That's what is proper, and that is what is being done. A man who deserves all the respect that can be given, covered with the national flag. The casket is, the body is covered with the national flag, and if you look properly, you will see the other items that signify that the body being carried or wheeled here belongs to a particular dignified class. We're going to see a lot of military presence here until the body is interred. I said earlier that the distance between Katsina and Daura is about 1 hour, 20 minutes. And so it's going to be quite a drive once the airport ceremony ends between Katsina and Daura, where the interment will take place. We look very closely, you will see that President Bola Tinubu had already received the body and is walking behind the casket as they are wheeling it down the aisle there. It will be very serious and deep moment for him, having worked quite closely with President Muhammadu Buhari when he was in power. Even before he became president, his emergence as the president, Bola Tinubu, then he was just a former governor, played a very active part as the leader of the APC, newly formed APC then in 2015, and he is walking right behind the casket as it's being wheeled down the aisle there by senior military officers.
Adwa International Airport for the state funeral of former President Muhammadu Buhari. The doors have opened now. Any moment now we'll see Vice President Kashim Shettima alongside the widow of the former President Muhammadu Buhari, that is Aisha Buhari, who would be alighting. Okay, the Vice President Kashim Shettima is out now. He's alighting from the aircraft. With the federal government delegation to the United Kingdom, recall President Bola Tinubu has sent a delegation led by Vice President Kashim Shettima that also had the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbadabiamila, to the United Kingdom to commiserate with the Buhari family and to bring back the body of the former President Muhammadu Buhari back to Nigeria.
you know,
by the scope of responsibility it takes on, in his lifetime. I think what precisely drove the Muhammadu Buhari personnel was his patriotism, his nationalism. We've had people occupied different offices, different areas of responsibilities. They either come short or are not exactly at par with expectations. But what you are profiling is historical references, of a man who had this opportunity like other people had such opportunities. And stepped into those opportunities, filled the roles he was supposed to play with a sense of commitment, a sense of history, a sense of nationalism, a sense of patriotism, and most importantly, with an attitude of frugality. Understanding the fact that the Nigeria in growth at that time was also a Nigerian that lacked resources, and therefore resources needed to be properly managed. So, and of course, even in his military pursuit, especially, and I want to use that pursuit deliberately because I find it as the right word to describe is the way he pursued, the Chadian forces into Chad at that time. It became something like a folklore, to a larger percentage of Nigerians that were following issues then. But again, you also realize that breaking military protocol, as it were, was also driven by a sense of nationalism, and it can be interpreted in the day-to-day commonplace terminology. Who are these people to come invade Nigeria? And that than just resist them and push them to the border was not enough. It was also necessary to show that this is Nigeria, and don't just dare come trespass on us. So when an individual is driven by such passion, the passion of sovereignty, the image, when you constantly carry the image of a sovereign nation in your mind, and that will make me to also quickly respond, to what my colleague on the far right, I can't get the name now, was talking about.
Dr. Sanusi.
Sorry, Dr. Sanusi was referencing about his refusal, and I want to use that word, refusal, to write a book or a memoir as had become the ways of big men, in recent times. He said in an interview that he holds very strong positions about life and about relationships, and that if he had to write a book out of a need to be forthright, he would have to write about so many people. And that his opinion about these people, when their children start reading, that they will not have good opinion about their parents, as it were. And that it was better for him to just leave that bit of expectation, that he was not going to write those books, and write the book, especially in respect, of the opinions, perception of whatever, that latter generation would have about this current generation, or the generation he grew with. And I think that defines, in truth, the kind of person the late former president was. He actually had clear perspective about what existence and, of course, leadership was all about. He had clear views about how people should relate in office, And for him, office was just get into office, understood the callings and the references desired, the mandates desired from that office, deliver on them. If we also, of course, transport ourselves back to the fact that it was the person behind the second Port Harcourt refinery, when he was military minister of petroleum resources. And that many years, I think 75, 76, many years after, we now had to, of course, contend with the need to resuscitate, rebuild, rehabilitate, as the case may be, the Port Harcourt resources. And so much money, was budgeted, allocated for that rehabilitation. You can only imagine, I think 1 month ago, when it became rife in the public space, that certain individuals in that responsible for the re-engineering of the Port Harcourt refineries had actually, diverted huge funds that were deployed for that purpose. You can only put your mind in the mind of Buhari, who was still living there, to understand the kind of pains he would have also gone through, trying to understand and comprehend what exactly was the problem and challenges of Nigerians. So I'm just trying to do that comparison for us to understand the kind of pains this Muhammadu Buhari would have gone through. Doing all those things, it would appear that we can't even get people to model themselves around Muhammadu Buhari, who was governor of Borno State, who was Minister of Petroleum Resources, who was chairman of PTF, who was president, who was head of state of Nigeria, who also later became, the president of democratically elected president of Nigeria. What exactly is the issue? If we start to, of course, contrast ourselves to that Buhari benchmark, perhaps we'll start evolving a new model, in leadership in Nigeria. Whatever may be the opinions, perception of certain people in certain quarters, especially regarding his time in office, 2015 to 2023. The truth is that when those 8 years are properly contextualized, we will first say clearly the Buhari's personnel, the Buhari's values, because if we had not had a Buhari in government between 2015 and 2017, perhaps we would have the recession the country went through would have been more elongated, and of course more Nigerians, would have suffered more, but by his own selflessness. He was giving up so much that were supposed to be his as the occupier of the presidency. And given the tradition, well, let me say tradition. Given the practice of politicians when they are in office, there are certain things, there are certain privileges that the politician determines that it belongs to him, even if they are not so denoted or so profiled in the Nigerian Constitution. So there are, of course, privileges in the environment that the head of that of government usually, abuse. But we had a president at that time who refused to abuse his office, who was focused enough, disciplined enough to determine the process of us exiting that first recession, we had, that was driven principally because we were not generating enough revenue from sales of crude oil. Wow. And we survived that. 2 years after we were growing, we were on a growth trajectory. For us to now get into the COVID-19. And that, of course, affected countries around the world, including the countries of the G7. Now, while countries of the G7 were declaring, inflation that they had not experienced in 40 years, in 60 years. We had our own possibility of going into recession, but faster than many other countries in the G7. We exited, that recession. And I don't see most Nigerians, applauding late President Buhari for that. And again, it is also as a result of the force of character.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kichuju. We'll come back to you, Doctor, very quickly. Senator Itayanan has been waiting in Uyo for a while. We tried to get him earlier. Senator, we need you to, just make your intervention because I know you will be tired. I haven't tried to link us up for a while. I tried to say maybe she should show us the panel of your phone to see where the unmute is. Perhaps it's written in a BBU, but are you on now, sir? If we can get Senator Itayanan to come up. Okay, if we reconnect with him, we will come back, we'll go back to Senator Itayanan. He's been trying to get through via Zoom. I understand he had some problems with his connection. Doctor, let me let you land before I
just land now. So, back to the text of your question that has to do with what we have lost. I described President Buhari as a comet. He came and the Nigerians' whole comet had fallen. Not many people will experience this kind of personnel again in a lifetime. And I'm saying that's the truth. Not many people will experience such person because when we start, of course, to track his person, his time in office, you will not find many people that compares with him. So, to a large extent, I think we need now, of course, to go back to literature, to start compiling those who had written books about him, and start understanding by building a profile, a true profile from this different point of view and perspective, of Muhammadu Buhari, without the emotions, especially of the limitations, of course, of the years between 2015 and 2023.
All right, Professor Fifen, very, as we move towards when the remains were arrived, we saw a lot of, some of his members of his close associates. He seemed to be someone who is loyal to friendships, especially the ones he made earlier in his career, even in some of his appointments and all. But perhaps not all, have the same character. Perhaps, I don't know how to, convey that question. Because in terms of trust, he entrusted a lot of people with key interventions that they were going to make. But in terms of the thrust of his policies, they were clear-cut. But in terms of carrying them out, perhaps many of his lieutenants some of his lieutenants, let me not say many, some of the lieutenants may have fallen short of the standard he set for himself.
Yes, you are right when you said that. I gave you a story of whenever he goes to Daura, his classmates, while he was a very younger person, will always come around him, and those he worked with in the military will sometimes come to the villa to see him. There was a particular day he was meeting with traditional rulers, and one of them came and said, during the what we call Biafran War now, I was your driver, I drove you. And he was looking at him. He now called one name. And the person said, correct, sir, correct, sir. You see that at that time, he was sitting as a president. It wasn't an informal gathering. But he was able to still remember and see spot, are you so person? And they had this conversation. The problem is, we were speaking before we came on live that difficult people in Nigeria, as it is, the definition now is people that are doing the right thing. He had his mindset. He had what he knew he wanted to do. So those that are still close to him, he knows when to be your friend, as it were. Because we talked about his appointment coming late. He was actually looking for those that have the same value system with him. And don't forget that there was a time where we were jokingly saying that Buhari was appointing dead people, because those were some of the people that he knew, okay, who are those that share this value system with me? Who is that person that want to get there and do what the people would want? So that made him take time. So when it has to do, and don't forget that some of the appointments, ministerial, some agencies and whatever, other people we have to recommend for him to appoint. But those that knew him, those that he has, there's one, most of you will know him, the former minister of FCT, Muhammadu Buhari, we call him MM Bello. That was another replica of Buhari. When you see him, he will just look at you, go to his office, he will give you Debino. And he believes that the world is just not about affluence. When that man left office in 2019, when he came back, people went to his house and he was owning his generator himself. This is a former minister. So he had people that knew his lifestyle and they were still with him. There were others that were recommended that couldn't really carry on. That is frugality. That is lifestyle of let's be prudent. So those were the ones that did not really follow his footstep as far as governance is concerned and being prudent. Those that were recommended by friends and those that also saw Buhari is just one man. You can't expect him to be everywhere at a time. So, but those that he knew, they were always there and they were also always doing what he wanted them to do. His friendship, superb. He's always doing those things. And I gave you an example of being in the Federal Executive Council. We were having a valedictory session and he was talking about the late Yaradua, the senior Yaradua. And he got to an extent, he was talking about how they were in school in India and in some places in military school, that they share bed, they are roommates and some other things. So he has a memory of his friends, and he's someone that keeps to his friends wherever he goes to. If he's in London, either for medical checkup, you still see people coming around him. The Bishop of Canterbury, the Anglican man, you know that man, he is a personal friend of the president and some other things. So he has that good memory, and he will definitely make you laugh. Staying with Buhari will make you laugh. And I told you how he remembers a lot of things too. When you change, he will change. He was telling Adesina, Mr. Adesina, his SA Media, saying, now that you are a chief, how do you combine being a chief and being my spokesperson? How is it like? And we all laugh. So he's a jolly good fellow to those that want to be prudent like him. But for the rest that don't believe in being prudent, he was a difficult person, and you can expect that in every setting.
All right, as we continue with the live coverage, we will show you, some VIPs who have come to sign the condolence register there in his house. We are seeing some pictures of people already seated and some signing the condolence register there. Former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa there. We're also seeing the one before then, Yayale Ahmed, all seated there. and the former governor of Katsina State, Bello Masari, there as well. And of course, that is opposition PDP chairman there, Umar Damagum, also seated there to bid former President Buhari farewell. We are still in the arrival of some motorcade perhaps from Katsina, having received the remains of the president. So it seems as if the motorcade from Katsina is arriving Daura now. So very shortly, we shall, of course, hand you over to our commentary team in Daura to continue the proceedings. But I will be waiting for that as well. My colleagues are on standby as well. Suleiman Konongi, Abdullahi Mustafa, all are standing by in Daura to give us blow-by-blow account of what is happening right there. But you just spoke about the issue of appointment, and then, of course, Dr. Kinishi just spoke about, his natural humor. There was an event where he was addressing the soldier that was much taller than him. Of course, the former president was well above 6 feet, but this soldier towered above him, and then he craned his neck as if his neck was paining him, and the entire hall was in fits, because he was just using that to demonstrate the fact that he saw someone who was much taller than himself. He had these, moments of dry wit, and sometimes even directed at himself, and that, resonated with a lot of people who believed in his kind of, administration. Moving on, how do we begin to, cultivate this kind of leadership style, which is on, you know what to expect from your leader. You know by his antecedents, and, you know what is on the cover of the book is what is inside the book, as against, some of these compromises we see just for photo ops, and then when you take this on the saddle of leadership, the mantra, takes another turn entirely. We've seen that, the different color or faces of politicians before and after elections. Dr. Sanusi.
For me, I think just like we have a Yaradua Center, I think we need to institutionalize the memory of the president by opening, a center that would document his life and times, his values, his principles, what he stood for, what was his take on different aspects of life for people that would want to learn more about him. This doesn't need to be just also a physical place. It could also be online, so that the younger ones, can also benefit from it. Doctor mentioned earlier that now maybe we'd have to now put together all of those people that have written about him in the past, so that we have a repository, for those that want to, benefit. So I think that's important, to do. He didn't end up building a library like most former presidents do in the U.S., and as former President Obasanjo did as well. Maybe that's something that is worth considering as well. But what's important is that he has led a very good life, by example. There is a complete, definition of leadership by example, and servant leadership, selfless leadership. Sometimes you hear people saying, well, he was a selfish man. He only liked himself. I've heard commentaries like that. But then you'd realize, just like we discussed off camera, the people that are doing the right things are those that are defined as being difficult or selfish or whatever. And also, maybe some people would, from what I see, from my analysis of his life, for somebody that has seen the good, the bad, the ugly of Nigeria, that has fought to keep this country together, that has mingled with, all kinds of people from all walks of life, understands Nigeria very well, knows
this is his own trajectory and this is light, and for other people, darkness. Maybe it was a strategy for him to stay aloof, because you reported that somebody said, reported that he was aloof.
No,
Maybe it was a strategy, knowing what, you know, he knows about Nigerians, and knowing that this is him, he can't deviate from this. Sometimes maybe it's a strategy to just remain aloof and just keep looking and remain silent, you know.
All right, just in your picture there, just while Dr. Sanusi was speaking, we saw the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris Malagi, arriving the venue. That means, of course, many of the dignitaries who are at the airport, international airport in Katsina, are now in Daura. We are seeing the defense chiefs, Chief of Army Staff there, Lieutenant General Musa there, and other defense chiefs arriving the venue, signaling that activities will soon commence out here in Daura. So we're expecting very shortly the arrival of His Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the chief mourner, to arrive the venue. And of course, the state governors as well from different parts of the country also arriving at the venue, and that's just outside the compound of the former president. Let's take in the ambience of Daura right now and just have a feel of what is happening right there on ground in Daura.
Host, their counterpart and host governor Umaru Dukorada at the government house Katsina, from where they moved to the Umaru Musa Yar'Adua International Airport, where they received all dignitaries from even from the neighboring Niger Republic. There is a representation from the military leader Abdurrahman Chani, led by the Prime Minister, as well as other dignitaries from Chad Republic and other parts of Africa who are coming to join in these important aspects of the final respect for late Nigerian leader Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away 2 days ago in London after a brief illness or prolonged illness, because he has been there for some time. Because some of the people of Daura were concerned that he was not able to celebrate the Eid al-Kabir here, which was a tradition for him. He came even when, as president, Eid al-Kabir was celebrated by him every year in Daura, but they missed him this Salah, and not knowing that they will miss him forever. So that was the statement by one of the mourners at his residence this morning. I can see the Minister of Information, the spokesperson to the federal government, Muhammad Idris, responding to questions while on his way to the
because it's on
helipad, because I can see a number of media representatives who were initially prevented. They were told that they will only be allowed after the remains were brought in. So they are now interviewing the Minister of Information, and that is Alhaji Muhammad Idris. Told that the delay in the arrival of the remains of the late former president, which was earlier scheduled to be around 1 o'clock, and the prayer was to take place around by 2 p.m. It is about 6-hour journey between the European nation and Nigeria. But here we are. Already his remains have been received at the airport by President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which was conveyed by the Vice President Shetima alongside the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila. Alongside the remains with the family members and the federal government delegation drafted to London by President Bola Tinubu. There was a military parade, which is a tradition for any senior military personnel and a former commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And of course, definitely been a national state funeral to be led by the nation's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Moment, a large crowd, everybody here is calm, mourning a great loss of a person who Nigerians and people across the world use and still using various beautiful adjectives to describe his life as an individual, as a leader, and as a citizen. At any moment from now, since you may wish to know that the distance between the Daura and Katsina is about 72 kilometers, which is about an hour drive between. But due to the nature of the trip and the large convoys of vehicles, so it may take longer time, because from the time the remains left the airport is more than an hour now, and that the Umar Musa Yar'Adua International Airport is just very close to the Katsina Daura highway, so it's really not too far or not very not short as well, but delayed by the crowd and the long motorcade conveying the remains, and of course the president and other dignitaries who are coming to take part in the funeral rites, which will be the final, the last aspect of this state funeral for the former leader Muhammadu Buhari, and after the prayers he'll be laid to rest inside his residence here in Daura, Katsina State.
All right, live pictures from Daura now as the dignitaries who earlier arrived at the Umar Musa Yaradua International Airport in Katsina now arrived Daura for the final funeral rites for the former president, late President Muhammadu Buhari. We're seeing different ministers and past administrators in the country thronging the venue. We'll be looking at, we'll be, of course, mentioning some of them as we see them. Earlier we cited, of course, the Minister of Information ushering others into the venue. And our correspondent said the prayers will be offered around the helipad, but it seems as if there have been some changes to accommodate the crowd, as we can see in these shots. Like we earlier discussed, it seems as if the entire town of Daura has emptied to the compound of the former president to be a part of this event. And we can see there, of course, so many visitors to Daura today, a lot of leaders from the north, many of the eminent emirs already there, spiritual leaders, former administrators, talking about state governors, military administrators, current governors as well. And this has cut across party divide. We have seen the acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party seated, even perhaps what looks like the sitting room there of the former president, talking about Umar Dramagu, former governor Bello Masiri, and seeing so many of them there, of course, Chief of Army Staff there, Chief of Defense Staff arrived earlier as well, in company of other senior military officers, including most of the defense chiefs, all in attendance. And we're still seeing the arrival of more and more members of the diplomatic corps there. And in the background, you're seeing people, citizens and indigents of Daura and, of course, Katsina at large. So this has been how it has played out since the news of his passing, reached Nigeria on Sunday. There has been an outpouring of, solidarity, messages of commiseration from friends of the country, friends of the former head of state, people who know him, even those who did not, but understood and appreciated what he stood for. Dr. Korede.
It's a testament to the character, the nature of the person, Muhammadu Buhari. It's what we're looking at, the result of the kind of relationship he chose to have with people whilst alive, in public service. We heard earlier from the gentleman that worked with him, closely in the media, that Baba Buhari was a president that was unassuming, somebody that would like to be your friend. He gives you the first shot to just make you calm down, like you're discussing, you're coming to meet with a fellow human being, a friend of yours, a father figure. Don't think you're coming to meet with an ego that has, a big fire on his head, as the case may be. So he has all this about him, yet not given away his integrous character that has built, that has built over the years and has made him. There's also a testament by a gentleman who fought alongside with him in the Civil War, a retired soldier who by fate happened to be my senior at my alma mater in secondary school, the Great Ibadan High School. Excuse me. He said to us, on the platform and then in writing, that at a time there was a change in government in the 70s. They were looking for who, will rightly become the next Chief of Army Staff. Those who are the authorities, those who are in charge of that operation, suggested a Muhammadu Buhari to become the Chief of Army Staff because of his uprightness, because of his frugality, because of his integrity, because of his commitment and dedication to service. But along the line, they said, guy, if you make this man the Chief of Army Staff, he may not listen to us if we're about to change things and all that. He will just stand straight. You know, he was younger, so he will do that at the time. You know, so he did not become the Chief of Army Staff. They chose another person. A time came, another coup occurred, which he did not participate in. And they now had learned from the mistake they made earlier. They said they are now looking for somebody that now has integrity to become Nigeria's head of state, to lead, governance, which was, how he became the military head of state of Nigeria, based on his good character. So you can see a lot of people, not only in Daura. This incidents that we're seeing now is happening in various homes, millions of homes throughout Nigeria, throughout Africa, and worldwide. Amongst human beings on earth, leaders on earth, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, stands amongst those that you can, have, that has a place in history when it comes to being an officer, a gentleman, a man of integrity, a man that is frugal, a good public officer that delivers on his words, that stands by his words and ensures that he delivers. A good example, or a father figure, to those who believe in him, to men and women of goodwill. We are not unmindful of naysayers, but we know that we'll keep doing the right things. We'll keep talking about Muhammadu Buhari as the right thing. And we'll just pray that people will see him as, a figure whose character, whose antecedents to be studied to guide them along life, as it had been in my own case. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at today.
All right. Very shortly, of course, we are expecting we'll get to the climax of today's activity very shortly as we continue to witness, of course, the movement of the VIPs and our international guests are there in Daura. I understand there was a slight delay in terms of the flight getting to Nigeria earlier. That perhaps, will be the cause of the fact while we were expecting this to begin at 2 for our viewers. Of course, the remains arrived earlier, about 3 o'clock, just before 3 o'clock in the Umar Musa Yar'Adua International Airport in Katsina, and has since proceeded for Daura. We're expecting the arrival in the next couple of minutes, since we have seen the arrival of the presidential delegation already, and some of the VIPs we earlier saw at the airport. Now that this has happened, sometimes events help to shapen the course of history and help shapen the course of a nation. Dr. Kinshiju, you know much about the legacies in terms of the economics of Buharism, of the Buhari, tenure. Moving forward, are there things that we could pick up from his presidency for leaders of today and tomorrow in managing the affairs of the nation?
While it did not, in clear political definitive terms, described his leanings, his socio-political, economic leanings. But of course, scholars would easily situate him, in the context of a social democrat. And being a social democrat, it would be, of course, a first-line appeal, to the mass of the people. And in his own case, I think there was a profound linkage to the people at the base of the pyramid, for which he advocated, throughout those 8 years, for which, for the first time in the history of Nigeria's political economy, he created an office that, of course, evolved to become the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. And of course, one also had the unfortunate resistance of that concept by the larger class of Nigerian elites who thought that the activities of that office of social intervention when it was first created couldn't have been impactful. It wasn't until some of us also amplified that advocacy to say that it was not just about Muhammadu Buhari. It's actually a concept developed by the World Bank, you know, and that this concept fitted properly into the advocacy of the president at that time. Because for him, where virtually the higher cadre of the political class and the economic class, as it were, benefited from the little meager resources that get into the public space, the larger number of Nigerians, you know, and he inherited about 85 million, you know, Nigerians living under the poverty line in 2015. And I think we also need to put that into historical perspective, you know. As at that time, we had 85 million Nigerians living under $1, the global poverty benchmark at that time, under $1 a day. And so this was a huge inheritance for him. It was a huge legacy to manage. So when he started, of course, to implement those interventions, people who couldn't understand the context of that intervention, and of course the context of the person behind it, you know, where of course, how do I call it now? We're enraged, more or less, because I know I was involved in a number of social engagements with some of these otherwise highly knowledgeable Nigerians. But for him, it was an exercise that needed to be done and see to the end, because it was talking about taking Nigerians, you know, millions of Nigerians out of poverty. And the first thing, the approach was first, let's stabilize these poor people. And that the economies of poverty is to state that these are potentials in redundancy. If you are able to create an economic agent or an economic agency out of a human being that could not live sustainably, you are also adding to the capacity, the economic capacity, you know, of the nation. So I think the burden of poverty is still a major challenge for the Nigerian states, and there is still a need, you know, to have focused programs, focused policies to circle out large numbers, you know, of people in the poverty circles in Nigeria. Now, of course, that argument was also furthered by the World Bank, who also now moved from the financial definition of the monetary definition of poverty to the multidimensional poverty, to say that more than 135 million Nigerians were living in multi-dimensional poverty. You know, and of course, it became a political information, you know, that was not exactly, how do I call it, tolerance, you know, tolerating for the political class, because the opposition was easy, you know, to reference that figure. But again, for the Buhari regime, don't forget that at that time there was a huge advocacy around open toileting, you know. There was a huge advocacy around increasing access to electricity, you know, and a number of attempts to also, of course, bring into reality the implementation of the millennial goals, most of the millennial goals during this time in office. So for me, I can see a linkage anyway from what the Buhari regime did with what the present government is doing, and I define my linkage as even from the base of the party itself. You know, the party that God used late President Muhammadu Buhari and the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to establish for the first time in more than 30 years, we could reference a political party that we could define easily what ideological standing they belong to, you know. So I think going forward, there's just a need to create a more symbiotic linkage with what the president, the late president, was doing in terms of circling more Nigerians out of the poverty circle. It's very important. It's if you have a latency, the economic latency that we are talking about at this time, and I think so far with the economic reforms, the unintended effect had been an increase in the number of poor people, you know. So, and that is why, yes, we have seen a lot of fiscal, you know, fiscal rates, fiscal impacts at the macro level. We are seeing inflation rate is falling. Most likely, the benchmark MPR rate will fall by the time the next Monetary Council meeting, Monetary Policy Council meeting holds. You know, we'll see some other, which will also translate to reduction in banking interest rates and all that. But everybody agrees that the millions of Nigerians that are the base of the pyramid are yet to feel it, you know. So that should be a major focus. Everything should be done, you know, to get to hit that large community, you know. We are talking of more than 35% of the population. So if you are able, if this government is able, of course, to achieve that, it would have been a major accomplishment. And of course, it will be an accomplishment that can be worthy of the memory, you know, of late President Muhammadu Buhari.
Well, let's look at the policies very quickly, Dr. Korede. And there's a lot of people have said this, that you vote for parties, you don't vote for individuals per se, especially when you are looking at the legalese surrounding elections and all that. They say it's the party, that is the platform, you vote for the party and all that. But in terms of Buhari, Buhari came to every election with his reputation. Whichever political party, be it CPC, ANPP, and eventually APC, he had his followership based on, you know, a reputation he has built over time. And that resonates with me in terms of, you know, being able to identify him with his particular character and what to expect from that character. Are we having that now in our polity? Especially, you know, it's not a reputation built at the national level. It was built from his service in the military to the, you know, positions he held while he was rising through the ranks. Are we having that now? And are we, will Nigerians queue behind such characters now as we, you know, continue in our democratic journey?
That brings to mind the principle of party supremacy. Yes, the parties are the ones being voted for in every election, the political parties, officially by INEC. You vote for the party. Actually, you thumbprint for the party, not for the individual. But the party in itself, the owners of the party, the powers that be within the party, the management of the party, will look at personalities that has a history of good leadership, that has a good history of followership, those that will be the winning card for them. The personalities of these two amiable gentlemen, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, now late, and the incumbent president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had built, you know, political values for themselves over the decades. So irrespective of the political party they are representing or they are campaigning upon, they will always win any election whilst alive. You know, so I don't want to say that their personalities, their persona, towers over the party. You know, with due respect to what we have agreed to allow party supremacy, you know, to take over our administration of politics, you know, by INEC's council, you know, to political parties. And this is how, you know, you don't find people who will come into a party, you know, spend all the monies and then ask the executives to park to one side while they rule over the party. There is party supremacy in Nigeria, despite the fact that our individuals, those candidates, are the ones that would have gotten, a good history, of good quality in terms of integrity, good governance, to ensure that when they become the candidate, they have the capacity to democratically win such elections for the party.
All right. Ms. Festus, you listen to what Dr. Korede was saying just now. We saw a movement, in 2015, what everybody now calls a coalition. They called it a merger in 2015, in 2013, from into 2014, and then eventually contested in 2015. AMPP, CPC, APC, and an element of APGA being a part of that contraption. Now that we have, this meeting of minds, and we're seeing some of them now, still coming up based on their, yes, it was a merger, but we still see elements of those parties, in terms of their outlook to governance. We had people in the CPC bloc in that government, people of the APC extraction in the government, AMPP, as well as APGA. What have we learned from that? Were they able to, under his supervision and during his presidency, were they able to fulfill their promises? Or what Nigerians were looking for in 2015? Why that was such a popular platform?
Yes. Like I said earlier, that when the president was elected, now late President Muhammadu Buhari, the expectation was high. People felt that indiscipline, corruption, and some other things were at the height of it. That if nothing is done, Nigeria was going to crash. Now, when he came, the body language thing we talked about, you could notice that for the first 3, 4, 5 months, things were right. And we started talking about body language. What that tells you is that we know how to do what is right. But for some reasons, for some benefit that we get from what is wrong, we refuse to do what is right. Now, normally, you are a Nigerian, and I wouldn't want to say that, but we also need to tell ourselves the truth. Whenever there is any system that is meant to check corruption, you will see people investing money on how to circumvent that system, spending so much money on how to, okay, this one just came. They said that one is very strong now. You cannot enter NTA now. If you are not staff, if you don't have a card, if you don't have something that will make you enter, somebody will bring out millions of naira to see how they can circumvent that particular structure that has been put in place. So after about 6 months, for the first 6 months, people were studying how do we circumvent this man that is Megaskia, that's a man that does everything right. They were now also looking for how to infiltrate those that were appointed and those that were close to him. We started seeing things like snakes swallowing money and some other things in the country. But the thing is, as far as Buhari was there at that time, from what we saw, those CPC voices, ANPP, APGA, and some other people, they were silent. Once Buhari is there, Buhari is there. It was about Nigeria. But whenever they want to discuss things at the regional level, we will not be able to say, okay, Dr. Korede here is light skin, I'm dark skin, let us do. By the time we come to Fisayo is talking to every one of us as panelists, and nobody is light skin, nobody has another color. So while he was holding sway as the president of this country, those were also voices. And don't forget that first 2 years, governance. Every other thing is next politics. So immediately that politics comes, you discover that those other smaller voices will begin to speak out more, because politics is very local. What we have in Abuja here is not politics, except if you are from FCT. Yeah. What we have here is people coming from those regions. So when the noise, the CPC block, the ANPP block, the ACN and the APGA, a part of it, when they want to get the next power, you begin to see voices coming. After all, you were not there. After all, you were not this. After all, you were not this. But Buhari tried as a president to be able to unite. But you can never, I would say, you cannot silence these voices because they came together as a coalition that we are calling them now. Then it was a merger to form the government. But when they go back, there are still places like, I'm from Delta State, or up until very recently, they will tell you that go and sleep. Delta is PDP, and nothing can be done. So if that PDP should come into a coalition, when we go back to Delta, the PDP's voice will be louder than any other coalition that you'll be hearing. But as far as we're coming to Abuja, the one united front will be louder. So Buhari tried as much as possible to create that one Nigeria image, but going back to the states, because politics is local, we see how those voices that were echoing.
I'm coming back to you, sir, but let me just take Dr. Sanusi on this. You know, the former coordinating minister of the economy, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo, while I was head of WTO right now, World Trade Organization, mentioned that when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. And we continue to see that play. Is it a flaw in our administrative process even when you come with good intentions? There are people, there are so-called some cabal, some whatever contraption you want to call it, just staying there waiting to make sure that you score an own goal.
Well, good intentions alone do not curb corruption. You need to put structures in place. You need to, introduce technology. You need to study, do your research, study the system, understand where the loopholes are, and where you need to replace, manual, services or services provided by human beings. If it's going to be better to use machines or, technology, you do it. And then you have mechanisms, to check at every point. A Buhari is required, right, at the helm for corruption to dissipate. But then him alone cannot do it without having all of the structures in place. I remember when he just came in, some people started returning money, some people were running away, going on exile. People just thought it was going to be like it was in 1983. But, obviously it couldn't be like that because the processes are different now. There needs to be investigation. You need to be found culpable. You need to go to court. The court needs to do their bit. At all of these stages, corruption is involved. It's quite sad. So it's difficult if it's something that most people, citizens, staff of agencies, even staff of anti-corruption agencies, staffs in the judiciary, everybody is in the business, except you. And when he tried,
it's a business now.
It's a business. It's a way of life. Unfortunately, I remember when he tried, to arrest some judges. You remember corrupt judges? He had facts and everything. So how can you carry a corrupt judge to be tried within his domain and expect that he would come up without having a clean? With having his image rubbish. They see it as this is one of us. We should not allow this to happen because it's sending a wrong signal. So how best can you do it? He tried that, it didn't work, there was a backlash. Even within the anti-corruption agency, a head of the agency had to be removed, because of all of this. But then I also noticed something was happening. People that were close to Buhari that knew that he didn't like corruption or anything associated with corruption, they latched on that and used it to also displace some of their enemies that were not necessarily corrupt. Because once you tell a Buhari that this person is corrupt, you have already spoiled his mood. And if it's somebody that he likes, the best he can do is to say, okay, let the person step aside, let him be investigated, especially if you bring some sort of concocted evidence that, okay, the person is. Most of the time, if you go and investigate those people, you find out that they were innocent. It happened on 1 or 2 occasions during the last administration that I remember of. People try to use the fact that he doesn't like corruption to, fight. But it's a good thing to have a leader that is known for his stance against corruption. But beyond that, we need to put checks, balances in place. Under him, there was TSA, there was different things that were introduced into our system through the Ministry of Finance, through the Accountant General Office to check, corruption, which I felt, were good innovations. But to what extent were we able to do that? Because in all aspects, from procurement to even budgeting to even payments, all of those, you find loopholes in corruption. So to what extent was he able to, curb it? Is what we're talking.
Dr. Korede Martins wanted to make an intervention.
Yes, just an intervention, just for quickly. Yeah, there was, an advocacy, some advocacy, with respect to the imperative of government looking through ensuring that the macroeconomics that we've been developing over time actually comes micro, that is for people to now benefit, at the grassroots, from policies of government. And this speaks to, the vision of Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, at the speech at the National Assembly, the second tenure. It's 2 years anniversary, second anniversary. The second anniversary as president. He said that, yes, the first 2 years we've addressed macroeconomics, we're seeing, but by the third year, that we're latching on to, and the budget 2025 that will commence as soon as National Assembly, reconvenes properly after all this, we'll deal with microeconomics, to which, they've budgeted a lot of money for things that will go to, micro businesses, small and medium enterprises, starting with the will be expanded, student loan scheme that a lot of parents who can't afford to, train their children in universities and polytechnics are benefiting, from. They're looking at per local government, 1 million, nano businesses being supported. Looking for, how small, medium-scale enterprises will be given single-digit loans. And at the larger scale, if you're a manufacturer, you have, excuse me, you own a factory that is verifiable, and you want to resuscitate your factory. Once they found out that you truly, running this business, you need money. 1 billion naira will be available through Central Bank of Nigeria to do this single-digit credit for you. So all these are embedded in this 2025, budget that is oncoming. So we're trusting that once, National Assembly reconvenes properly after all these national programs, the life of the 2025 budget will take effect, and all this will be. So that will put pay and answer to the imperatives and
I want to latch on some of the, submissions of Dr. Sanusi Mohammed, where he, works, I don't know whether it's pro bono or just closely with the Central Delivery Unit of Nigeria, under the Special Advisor on Policy. And, there's concept and there's the implementation of that policy. And that's where sometimes the human interface fails in terms of, making sure that this gets there. For instance, let's look at the issue of removal of subsidy and the windfall that has come at the state level, to just start with that. Sometimes almost triple some of the monies that they've collected, more than double in some cases, in some months. And just as we're having that discussion, we can see in our shots Senator Kashim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with the Governor of Borno State, Professor Umaru Babagana Zulum, all coming into the compound of the former head of state, arriving the venue now. Recall that it was Vice President Kashim Shettima who went all the way to London to, bring back the remains of the late former president, and now they've arrived at the venue of the event now in Daura. We just saw them coming in. So I understand that they are leaving the residence for the helipad where the prayers will be held. by the Imam there of Daura. We'll get there with the ambience and the commentaries shortly once our colleagues, are ready. Just before, we join them, we're just talking about, concepts and making these policies work. So we've seen the governors receive much more than they were receiving. Now disbursement and making sure that people get, in terms of sectoral impact in their states is where perhaps some of the states are stuck in terms of the citizens feeling directly why the objective of removing the subsidy and making sure that Nigerians directly benefit from the removal of the subsidy with increment in the allocations to the state. But the citizens are saying, we can see the AC, but we are not feeling the bills.
Yes, I'd say that advocacy should be directed to the citizens of the state. You see, Mr. President and the current federal administration, as you rightly said, has given increased budgetary allocation to states and local governments, which is unprecedented, in our annals of governance in Nigeria. So civil society organizations, advocates and all that should encourage citizens of each state to ask their governors questions, to write letters, to go ahead with subtle campaigns, to demand for how these monies are being spent every 30 days. They come to the Federal Ministry of Finance and the 1.6, 1.5, 1.7 trillion naira is shared between the three tiers of government, and governors go away with tens of billions of naira per state, and local governments get theirs directly. So people need to direct advocacies towards that. The federal government is doing what they could in terms of providing infrastructure, and promised that we'll go into actually ensuring that citizens benefit. But the president of Nigeria can only do the best by ensuring he allocates enough money to your governor. And it's the duty and responsibility of your governor and his cabinet to ensure that that translates into assisting the citizenry. After all, there cannot be a federal government without local government and states. Nigeria is made up of the 774 local governments and FCT and the states. Federal government is not, geographically Nigeria. The geographical expression of Nigeria are the 774 local governments are embedded in states, that is the states and the FCT. So, and we have governors who are educated, governors who are experienced, governors that are voted for by the people. So our advocacy should go to the people of each state to make demands of their excellencies for them to bring to account what they are doing with these monies they are receiving from the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR every month.
All right, to understand the prayer is taking place, we'll take you to the arena.
Allah sa akwai wani wajen Hassan ma yana taimaka mai cin gurin mai. Amma na ba ta take shi ba da kwanci kenan. Za a fara yanzu? Ba kama ganin mami su faruwa mutanen can ma ɗin ba kiɗa rike wuri. Amma sun shiga wancan duniya? Waje, wasu ne shiga ba kuma motoci waje ne. Ba kama ganin komai da sarakunan nan suna haɗa su aka kulle. Sun yi ne shiga, sun ga yanayin mutane ba su ya cika. Da baya.
kamar an kawo babu hanya suka tsaya don duka can duka sai a yi sahu mana kawai ne kawai da sai a ce na nan cikin sai a yi sahu kawai ganin sai mu biya yi ba a tare da sallah fara sallah
ka gane in wa'ancan sarakunan suka fafita biya gudan za su yi da sauran sai su ba mutane can ba sa tafiya ne can a tsaye suke ka gane magana ne ka gano kamara ta ka ganta amma wani mutane sun san kansa
yau kuma na ina
ani ne ba maki a ce wasu suke ke wasu yau kuwa yau ya shiru ya shiru
an yi sallai ina gaya ma muna nan duka muna nan an samu cikin helifat amma kuma duka ba abin da wanda ya sa abin da yake a waje ta zo ta zo da karfe 5 a nan ta ga ga maka yan jarida su kansu ba za su iya baka labari ni da ba ga muna wallahi ba abin da wannan zai baka ina gab da yanki yanki yasa wallahi wallahi ga sana kuna yin shiga kuma su kansu yanzu an ce wai a fita kuma sun rasa hanyar fita su kansu wallahi su kansu sun yi fita ba su yi organizer abin ba ya tuta muna nan mu ne ga muna mun fara karanta Allah
ai ba wannan bane wannan nan cikin da ake na cikin can ai da shigo ga nan ku kashi wannan shigo wannan
assalamu alaikum wallahi ina can amma ina
wannan gwamna abin da wajen
ba mutu da abu ne kawai Allah ya hankali ai yanzu ba ya sallako ko an yi yanzu za ku daga gaya mana ina tare da su ba a kan mike ne shi yasa Baba, ai sallan ne? Za a fara ne. Sallan za a yi a can waje? Yanzu muka bi da su. Ya ce kai ne kakar dama za mu tambaye ka. Kai kake ganin wanda bai ganuwa. Kai ke kallon kowa. An kulle ba na wanda yake ma da hidima muka shigo ya karye mana.
ne ba su kana security yana kallon cd ke sai ji magana shi ba a yi ba na take ke voice ne kake ina ga a yanzu dai za a dama na sani a yan karama ce ni na toma da ita daman ajiye abuna ne na to da wata kagaci layi ne kawai an fara ne amma ni
ai baya gano
Allahu Akbar. An gama.
Okay, that was the funeral prayer led by the Chief Imam of Dora and attended by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in honor of late President Muhammadu Buhari. And the place was, the helipad was too full that the funeral had to be conducted outside and with the remains inside the because of the there. And ambulance is now being moved out of the premises or the surrounding of the helipad to the residence of the late leader, where he'll be laid to rest within the courtyard of that private residence here in Daura. Attracted where he lived. He lived a significant portion of his life here, especially when he left the military, and after leaving office as president, the 15th president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Indeed, the people of Daura are in a state of mourning, though it's a national mourning. There is a 7-day days declared by the president as days of mourning. Flags are flying at half-mast, and all ministries, departments, and agencies directed to open condolence register at the entrances of their various offices in honor of the great leader who is now receiving the final respect from the nation he served for several decades, because he joined the military in 1962, so he has been serving the country for more than 6 decades. 1962 to 2025 is exactly 63 years. Now the president, vice president, emir of Daura, ministers and all dignitaries are moving towards the residence of former President Muhammadu Buhari, which is located not far away from this helipad here in Daura. It's about 250 meters away from this place, and it is there within the courtyard he will be laid to rest, which is the final respect in his honor. And the 7-day mourning continues till Sunday next weekend. And the third day Fidel prayer is expected to be held tomorrow morning, that is Tuesday, at his private residence, and is expected to be attended by the Vice President Kashim Shettima, who has been with the family of the deceased, together with the Chief of Staff to the President, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. And the prayers is part of the morning, is an additional activity after the funeral prayers to seek Allah's mercy and forgiveness upon a deceased person. And of course, thousands of people are here and join in doing so, and more are expected to do it again at the Fidel prayer, which with Vice President Kashim Shettima, who representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on that occasion. Now we are expecting to see if our colleagues can get it, the location of the burial within the courtyard of his private residence here in Daura.
Lots of off records, man.
Lots.
Sure.
The prayers have been concluded as supervised by the chief imam there, and then of course the emir of Dara present also, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Vice President Kashim Shettima, all witnessed the prayer, and now the movement is to the family compound of the late president, and where he will be buried at his courtyard. We're seeing shots of his final resting place on your left there. That's where the remains are being awaited by members of his family, close associates, as well as dignitaries who have come to witness the exercise. Sometimes religion humbles you. After traversing the whole world, you come back and then you see the final resting place, then you know that man is just on a journey.
Yes.
Dr. Sanusi.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I think, this is deliberate. God wants us to understand that this life is transient, and that, as he has written in various holy books, there is a life after this life. and do not try to make this life your final abode by, acquiring what you don't require. If you look at the final resting place of our former beloved president, Muhammadu Buhari, you see that it's just a small square inch of dog, place, soil for him, to rest eternally. This is also a lesson for everyone, really, whether you are in office, whether you're a big man, whether you are, just a poor person. We are all going to die. Every soul shall taste death, and that will be your final resting place. Everything you've acquired, all the houses, all the vehicles, all the money that we all strive for, you're not going with anything. Yeah, you're only just going to go there with your legacy, your good deeds, and all the shortcomings that you have. And at the end of the day, you account to your Creator. So there's a big lesson there for people that think. But then it's just we sit down and just sorrowfully talk about these things. But by the time the president is laid to rest, after 2-3 days, everybody will just go about their normal business again, which is also a lesson in itself that just like late President Buhari lived his life, he didn't really care about what people were saying. He had a focus, he had his principles and his legacy that he wanted to leave behind. And he knew that at the end of the day, he would be alone. So if he cared about what people said and he did things that were not right, now he's alone. He's now with his Creator. He now has to account. So we shouldn't toe that part of, doing what's wrong just to please human beings. We should also always strive as individuals, as leaders, to be fair and firm, to stand on what's right, and then at the end of the day, you know that you are going to account for it.
All right, we're seeing former governor of Nasarawa State there, Jalaji Tanko Almakura. All of them are moving into the compound of the former president to give him a befitting farewell as the funeral burial rites are about to commence. Earlier we saw the governor of Borno State, Professor Umar Babagana Zulum, also getting into the compound there, and we are waiting the president as well, who will also be at the burial site as well, and close associates and members of his immediate family are there as well, including the governor of Katsina, who has been welcoming people into Katsina State and now the compound. As you can see, that's the final resting place of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Like Dr. Sanusi said earlier, from the big residence of the villa and different places around the world, for man, at the end of the day, it's not much more than just the size of your body laid to Mother Earth. And politicians there as well will know that what remains of the dearly departed president are his works and the mark he left on the various places he worked and people he impacted upon. Dr. Kinshiju.
So that's the Holy Bible tells us, that it's good to go to a place of burial, than to go to a place of celebration, because when you are partaker in such, you understand the imputation of existence itself and the reason for life. That it's a reminder to all humans alive that one day we will depart.